What's up, people of the Most High God? This is Christian Smith.
That was
Don't
so
laugh at me. Wait,
churchy.
don't do that. Don't do that. I'm in my pastoral mode right now. Hold up now.
Ooh-wee.
Good evening, saints and Christian friends. We are back again for
Ah,
TFC Presents Real Talk. Thank you to those who joined us last week who are back again this week. We had so much fun. We decided we come back and we have Miss Pamela Merritt, who is joining us today. So before we get started, I want to ask everybody who's watching this, please share. This might help somebody. Share, share, share. Um,
share the love.
exactly. And since everybody watching may not know who these beautiful people are, I want to give each of them an opportunity to introduce themselves before we just unpack this topic for the next 30 minutes or so, the sin of individualism. Because last week we talked about Kanye and Trump and the evangelicals and that whole vibe. So now we're taking it a little step further. So, real quick, Marielle and Pamela, introduce yourselves and we'll get into this discussion.
Cool beans. I'm Marielle. My role at TFC is I'm a worship leader. But I feel in my spirit I won't be the only one someday soon. But I'm the worship leader, and yeah. So hey y'all.
Hey, Marielle, girlfriend. My name is Pamela Merritt, and my role at the faith community is the resident therapist. I am the wife of Kristian Smith, and yeah, I am here to give my insight on this sin of individualism. Sin of individualism. Yes, I'm excited about it.
Yes, Pamela was supposed to be with us last week, but she abandoned us.
Don't do that.
So
Don't you do that.
we forgave her.
Don't you do. Don't do it. We're not
And
gonna do this. We live together. We're not gonna do this. We're not gonna do this.
what happened? I just want the people to know what
Nope.
happened.
Nope. We're not gonna do it. We're not gonna do it.
Well, I felt abandoned. My wife is a therapist, so I felt as if I was
You're
abandoned.
right, and you're entitled to your feelings on those. You're absolutely right. Sorry, Marielle.
That's all right. I listen. I'm that Homer Simpson last week. I just be back into the bushes.
Right,
Y'all got it.
right. But you know I banter, so you understand what we doing.
I do. I got you.
So just as a brief introduction, of course, we're the faith community. For everybody that doesn't know, again, share the video, share, 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 share. Tell somebody about it. By all means, start a watch party. Share the video. We talked last week about Trump, evangelicals, Kanye. What's the whole connection? Marielle and I had a good time. The thunderstorm tried to block what God was doing, but we wouldn't let it be so. So we just kept that thing going. And then right after we got done, we engaged in this conversation about how individualism plays out in all of this and wanted to really like talk about what is the connection between individualism and the brand of Christianity that many of us practice, because I think it's pretty multi-layered, and we'll try to do as much as we can in the short time that we have. We can't possibly cover all of it, but just something to touch on it real quick. So let's go with Pamela. Tell us, Pamela, what is in your assessment the connection between individualism, and then also tell us, when you say individualism, what do you mean by that? What's the connection between individualism and the way many of us practice Christianity today?
Okay. So whenever I talk about individualism, what I mean is being able to embrace the individual components of your personality, the way your thought processes, the things that are important to you, the things that you are passionate about, the gifts that God gives you, talents that you cultivate, those are the things that that set you apart from other individuals. That's what I mean when I talk about individualism. I know when I talk about it with my clients, those are the things that I highlight. What are the things that set you apart from other people? That is your individualism. So that's the definition of that for me. And your question was, how does that relate to the
Yeah, what's the
Christianity?
connection? Yeah,
What's the connection between the individualism and the Christianity?
yeah.
It depends on the sect of or group or type of Christianity that you practice. And I'm kind of full of information because I've been in my religious trauma therapy bag all day today. But depending on where you are, the goal is to get everybody to think the same, believe the same, and carry out the gospel the same. The problem with that is that trying to get congregants and believers to be a monolith, you squeeze out the humanity. So you don't leave any room for their humanity. In that humanity is their individualism. And what happens with that is you get into some church spaces and they push you to be a part of the group by any means necessary. So that means if you have to change the way you think about God, you have to change the way you relate to your neighbor, you may have to change the way you think about the afterlife. Sometimes our individualism doesn't fit into that. Now, if you're somebody who, and I'm going into something else, but if you're somebody who has the desire to belong more than you do to be an individual, that doesn't create a problem for you because you'll make an adjustment. But for some people, they struggle with the Christianity. They struggle with the doctrines, and they struggle with the sermons and the things that are said in the pulpit because it just doesn't line up with who they are as an individual. And then, to be quite honest, church sends mixed messages about individualism. So that's another component of it as well. But yeah, that for me, that's our tie. That's our tie.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing. Geneva Gray just showed you some love. That's
That's
my
my
co-spouse. That's my co-spouse, Geneva Gray. Also, I want to say hello to Mama Randall, who's joining
Mama
us today.
Randall.
Mama Randall, we love her.
Yay, Mama Randall.
And Josh, I rebuke this comment in the name of Jesus. I will not be sleeping on the couch tonight.
Oh,
All
my
right.
goodness.
I rebuke it.
I
in
wouldn't do
Jesus'
that,
name.
Josh. I would send him to our co-spouse's house. She got
Right.
a whole basement.
Right. I ain't gonna be sleeping on nobody's couch. No, you bring up some great points about how multi-layered it is. Marielle, anything you add to that?
Yeah, so I would actually come from the other side of individualism, from a theology based of theology is done for Christianity. Usually my argument for individualism is centering the gospel on the individual as opposed to the collective. And I think that that's one of the issues that we see with a lot of white evangelicals, especially when it comes to dealing with white supremacy. There is this acceptance of, well, Jesus died for me versus Jesus died for the world. So because we're so entrenched in individualism, it removes cultural responsibility for what a group has done, right? So
That's
this is
good,
why you hear
Marielle.
comments like, well, those are my ancestors. I didn't do it, right? And if we look at scripture, most of it is written to a collective, right? It's very, and even if there was individualism in some instances, like encounters with Jesus, it was always to benefit the collective. And my problem with Christianity in some ways and how it is, it we've made it all about us, and we've taken things where it was really intended for the collective, but we've made it about us, right? So when I mention individualism, I mean that because I feel like that has completely disrupted people having a cultural responsibility when things happen. So yeah, so that's my kind of definition. I just come from the other side of that because I think what Pamela said is completely accurate. But I think there's a theology issue. And if I can add this point, that's the selling point of Christianity. Is Jesus died for you. And I'm not saying that Jesus didn't die for you, but he died for the world. And I think the problem with keep pushing the you narrative, it completely strips away from what we really should be doing, which is the taking care of the collective. And people struggle with that because they make it me centered. So that's just my 2 cents.
And you know what? The issue between the points that you and I are making is that a lot of churches don't have the balance between the community
Right.
and the individual. So then you get offsprings like fundamentalist, really conservative fundamentalist sects who everybody needs to be a monolith. And if you're not, you're rejected. Any sight of something that doesn't fall in line with what the group is doing causes you to be ostracized. You are absolutely right. And then we have the flip side of that, which is your point about the way we need to be mindful and attentive to our community. And I think that we're both right, but the church is wrong because we don't get taught balance. It's
Wait a
either
minute.
one or the other. One or the other. There's no middle ground.
You're not gonna talk about the church
Right.
like that. I'm not gonna. Nope. I'm the moderator. Let me cut this off right now. You're not gonna talk
I'm
about the
trying to
Lord
get both
church
my
like
hands
that.
in the camera.
No. One of my friends, a dear friend of mine, used to always say to me that the scriptures say that when Christ comes back, he's coming back for a church without spot or blemish. And my friend would say, based on the state of the church, he ain't coming back no time soon. Because this church got so many spots and blemishes. Ain't no way in the world he about to come back right now. So we got time. Um, so now you guys bring up great points on both sides of the point, which is why the sin of individualism was such an interesting topic for today, because it's like, what angle are you gonna come from, right? And I'm so glad, like, for everybody that's watching, we didn't plan this out. We didn't plan
No.
out like one
No,
of them
we
was
did
gonna
not.
take this angle and the
Nope.
other one was gonna take this angle. We left it wide open
Yeah.
because the individualism that the majority of the church considers a sin is the individualism that Pamela was talking about, being your own person. And then the individualism that Marielle was talking about, the church is okay with that many times. The church is
Mhm.
okay with just um, shucking responsibility for the systems. Because a lot of times, I think what we miss in church is that we are individuals within a system,
Right.
within a context.
Right.
And we see it a lot right now, particularly in the white evangelical church, where it only deals with personal sin. So we see these settings where it only challenges people, just be kind. Just be kind. That's all you got to do. Be kind. But sometimes kindness is not enough to address the damage and the harm that's been done to people many times by the church in the name of Jesus. So, it kind of goes back to that command of don't take the Lord's name in vain. Many times we take that as, well, don't say goddamn. Like that's the extent of don't
Or
take the
don't
Lord
say Jesus Christ,
right. Don't
which is
say
one
those
of my
two
favorite phrases.
right. Don't say those two statements, right? And Marielle's back with us.
Hey,
Um
girl.
I mean, I feel like the power just like went out randomly. It is not even storming this time. I done got
Girl.
through all of that.
The power works against you on Thursdays, okay?
I don't know
I
what it is. I don't
mean,
know what it is. I mean, you got some unrepented sin in your life that you
Don't
need to
I
go
mean,
ahead and
don't
take
do
clearly.
care of.
that. Don't do
We
that.
need to have a
Don't do
clearing
that,
service for Marielle so we can purge whatever's going on inside of her. In Jesus' name, everybody reach a hand to the screen and
no.
lay it on Marielle. Okay, anyway. So what happens is we diminish our responsibility as individuals within a system. And the church oftentimes practices selective individualism. So
Absolutely.
when you're in the church setting, you're not an individual. When you go out in the world, we want you to be an individual.
Hmm.
Don't just follow the crowd. But when you get in here, don't think for yourself. Don't ask any questions. Don't tap into your emotions. Don't tap into your intuition. Just do what we say. But when you go out there, be an individual by doing what we say.
Yeah.
So
And
really,
go ahead. I'm
it just
sorry.
comes down to doing what we say. Go ahead, Pamela.
I was just gonna say, and the harm in that, the harm of do your own thing out there, but follow us in here, is that the follow us in here is usually what we get from birth. For the true church kids who've been in church since birth, the follow us, be just alike, look just alike, talk just alike, believe just alike, is the hard wiring that we get as little kids. So when we get out in that real world where we're supposed to be individuals, and I can say this because I have clients currently that I'm working with on religious trauma. When we get out in the world to be individuals, we're ill-equipped to do it. And that's not just, I'm not going to just put that on the church. It's reinforced by our nurturing, it's reinforced by our support systems. So you're absolutely right. There is this duality of be a monolith in here, but don't follow the crowd out there. It's really hard when the following the crowd is what keeps you from going to hell in church. So then you
Mm,
have to turn around and not follow the crowd in the world to keep from going to hell. That is a really hard balance to have if nobody has taught it to you. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that to say that I believe in that type of teaching. I'm just highlighting the fact that a lot of times church sends people out ill equipped to be individuals because what they have ingrained in them and programmed in them is to follow the leader.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Marielle, you add
So
anything?
yeah, I was just gonna say, just like you said, we choose um when to insert individualism. I think we choose when to insert being a part of the collective. So what I mean by that is typically um churches, we really gravitate towards the collective idea when it's blessings attached to it, right? We done
Mm-hmm.
wrote songs about the blessings of Abraham. We done wrote songs about it's your inheritance, it's yours. Like we look at the children of Israel, and God gave them a promise. There was a blessing attached to that. Where we want to dismiss the collective idea is when it's attached to judgment, and it's attached to um, having to have a consequence for actions. So for me, on the other side of it is, if you and I will say this, it's hard because you feel like most of us, and I think we were talking about this Saturday in Bible and Beyond. If I didn't do something, why should I have to bear the weight of something? Like if I didn't make the decision, if I was the one that did it, why should I have to do it? But we see that example really all throughout scripture. So when I'm looking at the landscape right now of us talking about Black Lives Matter, of us talking about white supremacy, that's one of the bigger questions is, well, it wasn't me. So why do I have to bear the burden of that? And the problem with that is, if we're okay with being a collective for blessing, we gotta also kind of be okay with being the collective for when we have done something wrong as a collective. Um, so for me, it's, if a person is like, well, I didn't have slaves, my ancestors did. Well, you're attached to a lineage that did, and because you're attached to the lineage that did, they created a system that made it good for you. So even
Mhm.
though you didn't have slaves, you're still being a benefactor to what the legacy did do, right? So that's usually the argument. And I think that's something that doesn't come up enough from a theological perspective, is this sense of the collective, and how do we as a collective make something correct when maybe our generations before us caused it to be wrong. So for me right now, America is a collective. I haven't personally bombed babies. I haven't personally stolen from other countries. I haven't personally done any of that, but I'm attached to a country and I'm a part of one that did do it. So now I feel like my job as a part of that collective is to try to make something right. And I feel like that's part of the issue I have with the theology perspective of individualism, is because we want to stand alone when it's time to bear up under some responsibility, but we want to stand with the collective when it's time to receive blessings. So I think we kind
Mhm.
of have to
That's
have
such a good point. That's so
more
good.
conversation around that. So I just, that part gets me. And I get it. And let me please say that I get it, because you're like, I ain't do it. Like, I don't even feel like that. But I think it's our responsibility, if generations before us did it and we don't feel like that, to correct the sins of our fathers and our foremothers and all of that. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts on that.
Steve. Steve.
I
Oh
can't.
my God.
Steve Steven Thurston is
Woo,
the
we love
best, worst friend to have, like all at
we
the same
love him.
time. Um, so I want to say this, and then we're gonna wrap it up because we real talk is
Wait,
brief. I know,
we're
right?
done?
I
Right.
know,
It goes
right?
by fast.
It goes by
Wait,
really fast. I told
I
you. I
need to
told you.
talk about this more.
Yeah, we're gonna give you a minute to wrap it up. I think I think to kind of piggyback off of what Marielle was saying as we try to wrap this up a little bit, when we think about this kind of individualism from the perspective of the greatest commandment, I think we miss the fact that love for neighbor is what connects our individual self to God, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Jesus Jesus said the greatest commandment is love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. It's so funny how Jesus said that because Jesus almost assumes that you know what it means to love yourself. That's so interesting when really most people have no idea what that means.
He
Like
didn't know we'd
the
be here.
right, it's like a scary idea for people to really embrace loving themselves. But Jesus assumes it in the greatest commandment: love the Lord your God, and then love your neighbor as yourself. He says you can't do anything within this faith without hinging it on these two. They come together, they come in tandem. You can't separate them. So, what Jesus was saying is that in order for you to love God, you got to love your neighbor. In order for you to love your neighbor, you got to love yourself. Sometimes the way we practice individualism and what you were talking about, Marielle, is we try to skip over love for neighbor to get to love for God. So we want the blessings for ourselves because we know how it benefits us. And then we want to skip over the responsibility of love for neighbor to get to love for God. But Jesus said love for neighbor is what connects love for self to love for God. So you
Yeah.
can't be such an individual that you just overlook the plight of all of your neighbors. You overlook the how your blessings may have disadvantaged your neighbors. And I think that is something that we too often overlook within our church context. And we should start paying more attention to that. So, since we've talked about individualism from two different perspectives, I want to give each of you an opportunity to talk about how we can better navigate individualism from whatever perspective you decide to approach it from. How can we do better with this? Pamela, you go first since you was like ready.
No, for me, the greatest commandment theology provides the balance. It provides the balance because it says, love yourself as you love your neighbor. There is individualism there, and there is community and love for others there. So if I learn how to love myself to the fullest capacity, and I honestly believe that's an ongoing journey because life is an experience. So learning how to love ourselves as we love our neighbors. So it's like there's not a separation between me and my neighbor. That's the balance for me. So so it's like there is part of what I said about being an individual and leaning into the things that make you unique. And then at the same time, the other part of that is what Marielle talked about, is about taking responsibility for the community and making sure that you take action for the betterment of the community. So it's one thing for me to be an individual, Pamela Merritt, and lean into, my obsession with the psychology of religion, or to lean into my craftiness, or to lean into my whatever. But then the other part of that greatest commandment theology also compels me to look out for my neighbor. So when I go vote, I don't just think about myself. I think about the benefits for my neighbor. And although there may be something on the ballot that is extremely beneficial for me, I consider my neighbor and how is my vote going to affect my neighbor. So for me, how we move forward, just personally, is that I lean all the way into that greatest commandment theology. Loving myself and loving my neighbor is a reflection of my love for God. There's individuality in that, and then there's the collective in that as well. And I use my individual gifts to help the collective community. So if there's certain things I'm good at as an individual, and the community is trying to push something forward that's beneficial, I'm going to render my individual talents to that collective project. That's how I look at it.
Very good, ma'am. Very good. Some people have been commenting here. Ariana said, I try to get people to look at humanity as an ecosystem. Yes, we all have our roles, but even if we don't see it or think so, what we do impacts the system.
Very
That's
true.
very, very
Very
good.
true.
Very.
I can't with you, Steve. I cannot.
Oh God. Oh God. This friendship is in turmoil. It's in jeopardy.
This is him
Marielle, what you
taking
got?
out his P squared anger on you.
Clearly, like he didn't ask for those clothes. Like he didn't ask for them.
So for me on my end, I think the question was basically how we can get better, right? Like how we can I think it's taking responsibility, and not just from an individual standpoint, like when we do something wrong to somebody else. I think we have to look at taking responsibility from the collectives that we're a part of when they've caused harm to other people. And I feel like that's the greatest commandment theology. And then not just that we take responsibility, but that we try to make a wrong right, in whatever way that plays out. And so I, like Pamela was saying, like when I'm doing something, how does this affect my neighbor? Am I loving my neighbor and how I'm doing this? And we think neighbor just means a single person. I can think neighbor means a whole group of people. So So I think that's just really important. So with Americanized Christianity, individualism, we just see it so heavy, where we just have no consideration unless it's for our own collective, right? Like if it's for our own, then we like, oh, because I don't know if it's in a movie or something, but there's a line that says, God bless America and no place else. I don't know where that came from and who said that, but I feel like that's the mentality that a lot of Americans have. There's an American Jesus and then there's the real Jesus, right?
That sounds like Ricky Bobby from a
I don't know who
mentality.
said it, and I
I
keep
The
could be
hearing
wrong.
only Jesus
I think
is
it's in a movie
American.
somewhere, but I feel like that's the mentality that many of us have. And again, we're seeing that with what's happening in the country right now. Well, it hasn't affected my collective, so all lives matter, right? So I think, we just have to start taking responsibility, both individually and collectively. And I think that's how it starts. And again, the center is the greatest commandment theology.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me see. Okay.
That's where it came. I
And
was like,
what is it called? What it's called, something of state or something like
is
that?
it head of state?
Is it head of
The
state?
name of it?
I think it might be head of state. I think
Sounds
that might
about
be
right.
it.
That sounds about right. Also, Ariana gave me some advice to deal with my friendship with Steven. So I'm gonna go check out Marielle's podcast with the facts.
Which Pamela and Melanie were on. So
Yes.
Yes. And shout out to whoever is handling the faith community's account today, because I stand by this statement as the pastor of the faith community. We denounce and reject Stephen Thurston and all that he stands for.
Don't
And just,
aggravate him. Don't aggravate him,
and
please.
just in case you didn't see it the first time.
Don't aggravate him.
Nah, this has been excellent. I think we have all shared some points that will require many of us to reflect more and be more mindful of how we can be our individual selves, and also understand that we operate within a system, we operate within a community. So I want to thank both of you for taking the time to do this. This is fun. It's real quick.
It
You don't
is. It
have to
is.
take too long. So what I want to invite everybody who's watching to do, if the faith community is a blessing to you, I want to ask you if you'd also be a blessing to us. The gospel is free, but ministry costs money, y'all. And we have a lot of things coming up, and we would love your support. There are a number of ways that you can help support us. You can find us on the Givelify app. Just search the faith community. Cash App is TFC ATL. You can do it on PayPal, or go to our website, thefaithcommunity.org/give. And for those of y'all that want to write checks, inbox me. I'll send you the mailing address. but but usually, most people want to do it electronically. But I really appreciate everybody for watching and tuning in. Please share this. Please share it. Share the video. Share the video. If you're watching it, share it. Come back and watch it again. Start a watch party. Have a discussion about it. Many times, a lot of the things that we do will generate discussion amongst you and your network, and that's what we hope to do. So please do share the video. Join us on Saturday for the Bible and Beyond. It's at 4 o'clock on Saturday. We do that on Zoom. And if you text disruptive to 31996, you'll get the information for that. And I think that's it. Thank you, everybody. Tuesday will also be back for TFC Presents. And then next Thursday, we have another Real Talk. We won't even know who's going to be on. It's just going to be people from the faith community. One day we got to get Josh on here.
Yes.
Josh.
Absolutely.
We need you to come bless us on TFC Presents one of these days.
Listen, I'm still chewing on what Josh said at the end of Holy Smokes.
What did
that
Josh
thing been
say?
in my spirit?
I was working.
So I'm paraphrasing because clearly I am not as articulate and amazing as Josh is, but he gave basically paraphrasing here, that they may have killed Jesus, but his resurrection proves that oppression does not get the last say. And I felt that in my whole soul.
Wow. Wow, Josh,
I
that's a
felt that in
nugget.
my entire soul.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Josh gave us the benediction.
Listen.
Wow.
Steve, I'm gonna put that question on Pamela and Merritt. No, I'm not gonna do it. We're not gonna be messy like that. We're not gonna be messy like that. Did y'all see what the question said?
Yes,
Don't
I
answer.
did.
Don't
Yes,
answer
I
it.
did.
Don't answer it. We just gonna go ahead and end it. Steve, we will not let you come in and disrupt what the Lord is doing at the faith community with your shenanigans. We're not gonna let you do
Woo!
it today. Thank you everybody for watching. We have fun. We'll see you all next time. Peace out.